Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are still waiting one more minute as people still are tuning in, and then we are going to start. Good evening or good day to everyone, depending on from where you're joining us. Welcome to this press conference on the climate case Saúl Luciano Lliuya against RWE. My name is Caroline Schröder. I am Climate Litigation and Communication Officer at Germanwatch. We are very happy to have you with us today. We are now more than, let me see, more than 25 journalists online and still coming more. So thanks for this huge interest. The climate lawsuit of Saúl Luciano Lliuya against the energy company RWE has entered the decisive phase almost 7 years after the case was filed. After a long delay, especially due to the corona pandemic, the site visit took place last week, so that's why we are here. Judges of the High Regional Court of Hamm from Germany, legal advisors and experts traveled to Peru to examine whether the plaintiff's house is threatened by a possible flood wave from the glacier lake Palcacocha above the city. The entire danger zone in Huaraz actually covers an area where around 50,000 people live. So it has been an exciting week, as I said. Before we get into detail, I would like to give you some info and some advice technically. We will start with statements of the 4 panelists we have here. Only this part of the event will be recorded, and the statements will be published on our website afterwards. After this statement round, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. For that, please raise your hand. There's a hand symbol at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will then unmute you so that you can ask the question yourself. It is not possible to switch on the camera, but we will hear you. I hope that's okay for you. Please do not write any questions in the chat. The chat is only for technical support and for sharing some links with you. So in case there is anything wrong with your connection, you can drop us a message and my colleague will try to help you out. If you speak Spanish and have a question for Saúl, our plaintiff, of course, you can ask your question in Spanish. So now I would like to introduce to you our panel. And maybe they can also switch on their cameras. We have Saúl Luciano Lliuya. He is a farmer and a mountain guide from the Andean city of Huaraz in Peru, and a plaintiff in this precedent-setting climate lawsuit. I would also like to introduce to you Noah Walker-Crawford, external Germanwatch advisor on climate litigation. Today he will translate for us, so thanks a lot for that, Noah. Then I would like to introduce to you Roda Verheyen from Germany. She is Luciano Lliuya's lawyer. She's been working on several climate cases in Germany on the European level and international level. Welcome, Roda. Next, we have Professor Christian Huggel, climate and glacier scientist from the University of Zurich. His research mainly focuses on climate impacts, risks, and adaptation to climate change, mainly in mountain regions. And last but not least, we have Christop Bals, Policy Director at the Environment and Development Organization Germanwatch, who has been supporting the case since the beginning. So now I would like to start with our statements. I would like to start with Saúl, Luciano, Lliuya. Saúl, te doy la palabra. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Buenos días, buenas tardes con todos. Mi nombre es Saúl Luciano Lliuya.
Hello everyone, my name is Saúl Luciano Lliuya.
Bueno, con el caso, con la demanda ya vamos a 6 años, un poco más. Y
in this case, now with this lawsuit, this has been going on for over 6 years.
Con esta semana hemos recibido la visita de los jueces alemanes junto con sus peritos y también la parte demandada y mi parte.
And last week we had a visit from the German court along with the court-appointed experts as well as representatives of RWE and myself.
Bueno, en los Andes, como todos sabemos, hay mucha desglaciación y tengo mucha satisfacción, estoy contento por haber podido mostrar el problema de la desglaciación y los riesgos que estos provocan.
As we know, there's an accelerated glacial retreat in the Andes, and I'm very happy that I've been able to show this, to show people what's going on with glacial retreat.
Y bueno, el caso, pues vamos a seguir, no sabemos qué es lo que las muestras van a arrojar y bueno, vamos a esperar lo que va a suceder.
And now the case will continue. We don't know what the result will be yet of the studies that have been done, but we hope it will turn out well.
Thank you, Saúl, Luciano, Lliuya. And now I give the floor to Roda Verheyen.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Hello. I'm in Lima still. So we've all just seen each other in Huaraz for a whole week, a very intense week. As you know, we've started this case in 2015, and we've had the great breakthrough on the 30th of November 2017, where the court in Hamm essentially stated that there is, under German law, responsibility for the impacts of climate change for large emitters. That is still the case, has been confirmed since many times, and that's also the reason why we went to Huaraz in a very intense and unusual site visit. I will tell you a little bit more what happened. Essentially, as under the German procedural rules, experts appointed by the court have to be able to make their own investigations into the problem. And here the problem is the risk, because we're currently treating only the first evidence question. The court handed down 2 general questions in November 2017. One is there a real risk, an imminent risk to Saúl's house? And the second is was it climate change? So attribution is not actually at the forefront of this site visit. So what happened was the court and our experts and ourselves, we all looked at Saúl's house, measured the house, looked at potential remediation and protection measures at Saúl's house down in Nueva Florida, which is a part of Huaraz. And then we all went up to the Laguna Palcacocha with the help of the Peruvian or the local authorities, in particular the local judges. And we held a formal site visit at the Laguna, where the court-appointed experts from Germany took measurements of the artificially built dam that is there since the 70s. They took measurements of the siphoning system that is in place since the 2009. They also took actual soil samples from the moraine. and also flew with a drone over the glacier and the lake. The object of all of these investigations is the question posed by the judges. So is there an imminent and actual risk to Saúl's property from a glacial outburst flood? This was, to my mind, we then also had a very extensive discussion with the Peruvian authorities, which I think Christian Huggel will tell us more about. But to my mind, the site visit went very well. Nobody got sick, at least not very seriously, even though obviously that is a very unusual altitude to be working on. The experts still have a lot of questions. So what we're now doing is delivering more data and answering more questions so that the experts can deliver their report to the court. But to my mind, what really has happened also during the site visit is that the chain of causation that we argued in this case, or that we have argued since posing the issue to RWE until 2014, which is global warming leads to glacial melting, leads to a larger volume of water into the actual, getting into the lagoon, glacial retreating. So the position of the laguna itself being completely different than it was in the 70s. All of these things are essentially settled to my mind. Nobody questioned the issue of climate change there. Nobody questioned, I mean, nobody who was there actually could question the fact that there is a risk. Whether or not it is legally imminent enough and concrete enough is an issue for the court. But I think the site visit actually clarified that this lawsuit has a lot of substance. And that's how we also perceived the experts to take it. The atmosphere is very good, very amicable between the court experts, the lawyers sent by RWE and ourselves. It was a very good and appropriate conversation taking place in different levels. And as Saúl already said, we're now awaiting the expert statements. Then we will be able to take our stance towards what they have been written, what has been written in their expert report. And then there will probably be another oral hearing at the court in Hamm at some point in the future. All of this is to be determined by the court of law. And as Saúl's lawyer, I have to extend a very great thank you to the judges in Hamm, as well as to the experts who all traveled and had not so comfortable travels, I'm sure. And I always say that I'm very glad to be working in a legal system such as Germany, where the courts are engaged and objective. And again, at this point in time, I can only reiterate that that was the case. And I'm generally very grateful for all of the efforts that were put into this site visit. And that's, I think, it for now. All of the legal questions obviously can be asked later, including the issue of whether or not the legal assessment still stands. But as I said, it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been there. So, right.
Thank you. Christian Huggel, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to meet you here. I can just confirm or reiterate from Roda that we have a very constructive week in Huaraz among the experts and also the judges. On Friday, we had a long session in the Supreme Court of the provincial city of Huaraz with the also Peruvian authorities, the Peruvian judges and the local authorities and experts on glaciers and glacier lake outburst floods. Basically what our colleagues from Peru said, working for years and decades, they have a long tradition working in the Goria Blanca especially, that Goria Blanca, along with other mountain ranges in Peru, are highly impacted by climate change, of course, through glacier retreat, but also they have made an impressive case of the different events and disasters that have hit the region over the past years and decades. For instance, there was about 20 years ago, there was an impressive landslide into a lake called Safuna Alta, where the wave that was generated overtopped the dam of 70-meter height. So that's really impressive what these kind of impact waves can surpass. And the dam at Palcacocha is much lower than these 70 meters. At Palcacocha, they made a case that the increase of the volume from the 70s of 500,000 to now 17 million, which is a 34-fold increase of volume. And the attribution of this to climate change is confirmed and largely undebated. I can also just confirm it that the attribution case is also from the newest IPCC report, very clear that we have linking emissions, anthropogenic climate change to glacier retreat, which is not something local, but it's really something that affects the whole region and globally, of course. It's also from our colleagues, if it's without any question that there is a major risk from Lake Palcacocha to the downstream regions, in particular the city of Huaraz, where also Saúl's house is located. For instance, they were also reminding us that in 2003 there was a failure, a landslide of the moraine, of the lateral moraine that impounds the lake, that produced an impact wave that surpassed the dam and produced quite a bit of erosion, which the result was that because of the sediment in the water, the city of Huaraz was 1 week without water. So we have also precedents in Palcacocha. An important question, as Roda Verheyen mentioned, is that it has to be now further specified this risk of impact, because it actually comes down to what is the risk of an avalanche, ice rock avalanche that can impact the lake and then produce the wave that can be disastrous for the city. And the experts from the court will take this question further with information and data that is further provided to them, so that they probably come up with an evaluation of this risk, and eventually the court has to take a decision regarding about the risk of an impact into the lake and hence the risk for a flood disaster downstream in Huaraz. That's so far my report from the last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian Huggel. Now I would like to give the word to Christop Bals from Germanwatch.
Yes, my name is Christop Bals. I'm the policy director of Germanwatch. Germanwatch is a North-South NGO and at the same time an environmental NGO. Our mission is watching the German government and the EU, watching German and European companies, what they do in the world, especially in the global South. We want them to respect human rights and planetary boundaries. We want them to play a responsible role in the world. And in this case, we support the Peruvian farmer and mountain guide Saúl, who has already spoken, Saúl Luciano Lliuya, who is filing a lawsuit against the biggest European emitter, the German utility RWE, at the regional court in Hamm. And the reason is the energy company's immense emissions threaten his family, his property, as well as a large part of his home city of Huaraz. We expect as an outcome a precedent's case here, a case which not only supports the struggle against the risk of climate change for Saúl, but for 50,000 people in the high-risk zone of Huaraz, and even more in the region, far more in the region. But even more, it should, we hope, to get in the end a precedent's case in the struggle of global climate justice, where this is a very clear example of such a climate justice case. The orders to take evidence provided so far from the higher regional court in Hamm show that the court accepts the legal evidence that big emitters have legal responsibility in the situation of global climate change. They also accept that different from civil law usually, where the neighbor is your next door neighbor, and you are in a court case about a damage doing to this neighbor, that here is accepted that CO2 has a global consequence, and so we are speaking about a global neighborhood in this context. Now we are here in the phase of the case where the scientific evidence has to be proven, and it was really mind-blowing for me to see, even with the own eyes, the risk which is present there, that the water in some spots is clearly running behind the glaciers, between the glaciers and the rocks, and this is like a solvent for the potential glaciers. The regional institutions have already identified 7 hotspots where glaciers could come down. The lower half of the rock wall, we are already in a situation where the permafrost is starting to melt. So where we have a high risk that not only ice, but also parts of the rocks could come down in the lagoon. The volume of the lagoon has increased by a factor of 34 since the early 70s. So it's a far bigger risk of a big wave, and the newest risk mapping in the town of Huaraz shows even clearer than before that Saúl's house is in the high risk zone of this of Huaraz, together with about 50,000 people living in this town. And so we don't know whether the court will decide that this risk is imminent enough for in this legal court case, but I'm quite sure that nobody of us would like to go into an airplane where we have the same risk that it would collapse and would not land in a safe way as we have it here in this situation. So I'm quite hopeful that we get also in this regarding this risk a precedence case here, but we will see what the judges will decide. And also from my side, a big thank you to the judges who have organized this in a very fair and transparent way. That was a big effort to do this here on 4,500 meters. That was really a big thing to organize this. Thank you very much to the judges there.